Well, hello there and welcome to Tub Talk, the podcast for IT consultants. Well, today I'm in London, England to sit down in person with one of the most respected experts in the managed services cybersecurity space. Mostyn Thomas is the Senior Director of Security at Pax8 and is responsible for overseeing the company's channel security operations, empowering Pax8 partners to reduce risk, improve efficiency, and ultimately grow their business. Mostyn has more than 20 years of experience working with managed service providers, including founding Astrix Integrated Systems in 2001, a business he later sold to focus on cybersecurity. Mostyn is a qualified Cyber Essentials assessor and he holds security qualifications from CompTIA, the British Computer Society, BCS, and the National Cyber Security Centre. On a personal level, Mostyn is someone I've known and respected for a very long time, and I'm thrilled we have this chance to sit down and talk together. Mostyn, welcome to Tub Talk.
Thanks, Richard. Good afternoon. Great to be here.
Great to see you, mate. And for the benefit of listeners, how long have we known one another for now?
Do you know what? I was trying to fathom that out. I mean, it must be 10 years. I'm guessing it's got to be that long. Probably longer, but
I'm trying to remember the first time we actually met. I think it was at a CompTIA event.
I believe you're right.
So? Yeah?
I believe you're correct. Yes.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. So we talked about
probably in the bar.
Probably in the bar.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, neither of us drink apart from medicinal purposes.
Indeed. So, yeah.
So I guess for the benefit for our listeners who may not know your work, tell us a little bit more about your background. First of all, perhaps as an MSP prior to joining Pax8.
Yeah. Okay. So as you quite rightly said there in your introduction, we started Astrix. I had two fellow directors. We started an MSP back in 2001. And progressed and built that company to a relatively successful one before we sold it. We were an original MSP as well because a lot of people who started IT companies when we were starting were break fix, the traditional IT companies, and because of previous contacts and just how the market was at the time, most of our clients at the time, we started with schools. And schools, of course, have budget and just allocate it once a year. So you had the money and then you had to make it last. So we became MSPs without even knowing it, really, to start with. So having that payment and then having to manage it over a 12-month period and basically doing less tickets for more productivity was sort of inbuilt in Astrix from the start, really. Yeah. So we were fortunate in some ways, and we really enjoyed those days with schools. Learned so much, if you pardon the pun, but learned so much about how to defend networks against people who were trying to break them. 14-year-old kids, normally 14-year-old boys would be a really solid adversary at that point, and built a great team. So that was the MSP, and as you rightly said, we sold that in 2018. Or at least sort of sold the support part of it, yes, or whatever, and retained the name, and started a cybersecurity practice then, which had a strong MSP favour because nearly all the clients of Astrix Cybersecurity then were MSPs. That was our niche, as it were. Not just any old cybersecurity company. We've retained all that knowledge from being an MSP and got the T-shirt, and knew some of the mistakes we made and other folks. So hopefully we do a reasonable job of helping MSPs keep safe. And their clients, obviously, as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm intrigued. You are my go-to guy for cybersecurity. They'll text you or call you or whatever, ask about this, that, and the other. I know I'm not alone in this industry as well. When did you see the tides shifting away from a generalist MSP towards people having a focus on security?
I don't know. That's a long story, really, but I think that was probably in the do they call it the teens, mid-teens, about 2015, something like about then. I think things started to change a little bit. I mean, obviously, the whole advent of cryptocurrencies and ransomware became a thing, even though it was sort of quite niche at the time. People started to take note of that. And also, I think a lot of MSPs had gone into other niches like managed print and other things that way. So I think MSPs had adopted the idea that they could have several identities, as it were. So I saw it around then, and somewhat of a moment for me really was we were using Continuum as our network operations center, which was great and somewhat of a step change moment for us and for a lot of MSPs. And I attended a conference, and I can remember Michael George, saying that this was the year of cybersecurity, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year. And I was like, do you know what? He's got this absolutely right. So I don't take any kudos for that. Smarter man than myself said that, but I think that was the moment I came back and said, no, we're going to do this. We're going to do cybersecurity, and I think it's the way to go. And I don't know whether that was luck or whether that was foresight, but that was the moment. I think around 2015, 16, things started to move differently.
Yeah. Have you ever told Michael that he was the catalyst?
Do you know what? I don't think I've met him because he left and never really had a chance. And we've always seemed to miss each other at these events. We've just missed each other. So I'm hoping maybe one day this year I might catch up with Michael and tell him.
Well, I tell you what, I've become good friends with Michael. We had him as a guest on the podcast the other week as well. Wow. He's working in cybersecurity now. So of course, his mouth is. So I'll be sure to pass your regards on and hopefully connect you two up as well.
That would be fantastic.
He's a wonderful friend and a great mentor as well. Really good. Let's talk about Pax8 for a minute. I want to go back to Astrix in a second as some of your experiences, but Pax8 have made huge waves within the managed service industry. At first, I thought it was almost bizarre that MSPs were getting so excited about and I'm doing the hand quote here, about a distributor. But of course, Pax8 have demonstrated they're much more than that. Why do you think? What do you think is behind the popularity of Pax8 amongst the managed services world? First of all, in the US, but now in the UK and Europe as well.
I think it's as ever with a lot of success stories. It's never one thing. I think it's a combination of factors. But they do the distribution thing really well. I think John Street was on record as saying, distribution is broken. We're going to fix it, and they do it really well. Because I think distributors that were traditional moving equipment and what have you just weren't set up correctly to work in the cloud industry. So I think that's one of the bedrocks is they do it really well. They've set an amazing system up that's automated that whole gain efficiencies piece. The whole billing bit, you can have it billed direct, or you can deal with it yourself. So lots of options there, which MSPs like. They like that. And of course, the whole accountability piece, great. But I mean, okay, on its own, that's a good, that's a really good offering. But I think then added to that are some of the amazing staff that they've collected and managed to recruit. And I'm not saying that because I'm working for them. Some of the team I've joined are just outstanding, and that goes all the way through from account managers to sales specialists to technical specialists and advice and marketing. They're absolutely top draw in our industry. And that's not by accident. They obviously recruit the right people, but make the conditions correct to retain them and enthuse them and teach them internally in order to teach the MSPs. So they seem to have the secret sauce. They have this whole being humble and learning from the MSPs what they need and then supplying what they need. And I think it seems like a fairly simple formula, but a lot of people don't get that correct. So I think that's really where we are. And of course, a great lineup of vendors. They choose vendors very, very well. There's a very stiff process to get as a vendor at Pax8, and quite rightly so. So that's a really compelling argument then.
Yeah, and you and I were sat in a hotel reception. I should say, for the benefit of listeners, we're sat in a hotel room here, Mostyn and myself. It would look odd to anyone else who doesn't know us, but we're sat here next to the bed recording this podcast away. This is the professional life of IT.
Rock and roll, absolutely.
Well, we were sat in hotel reception earlier and we were talking about how managed service providers nowadays, there is so much change, such a rapid pace. And so MSPs are leaning more and more on their account managers, on their distributor partners to point them, to signpost them in the right direction of the correct tools, resources to help them grow their business. So I think, Pax8, the timing for coming into the market was absolutely spot on as well. And I've heard nothing but good things across the board. So, and again, I'm not just saying that because you're a Pax8 person sat opposite, but we've had a number of the Pax8 Pax8 people on this podcast for good reason, because you're all world-class experts at what you do. And, John and Phil and the team and everyone else have pulled together this amazing lineup. But I guess I want to ask you, it was all the way back in Tub Talk episode 32 that we last sat down. Doesn't that make us feel old now? Of course, we mentioned at the time you were running Astrix, an MSP in Wales. We actually talked about, I don't know if you recall this, how to run a successful MSP in an area with no big businesses. And it was a very well-received episode. I'm intrigued, though, now that you're part of the Pax8 team, what has the transition from MSP to cybersecurity expert to vendor felt like for you personally?
Yeah, it's quite a journey, isn't it? And I can't believe it's that long ago we were discussing. Yeah, episode 32. Quite a journey. I guess because it's been relatively quick, but it's also been gradual. So moving from selling the business and having all those small businesses, as we said in that episode, then becoming cybersecurity and focusing on MSPs and their clients. And we have some larger clients that are not MSPs as well, that immediately moved out of that small business because we were working UK-wide and Europe-wide. So no longer was it that running an MSP in an area with just small businesses. Yeah. We transitioned to some MSPs that were quite large. Some who were like, these are big time MSPs. So that was a small change. They've got the same problems, but some different ones, and they look differently because they've got many more staff, or they've got much bigger clients, and some of those clients have got certain needs that you have to report on, or you have to do certain things, or have certain certifications for. So that was a learning curve, understanding those sort of things. So we ended up working for some larger companies, complementing their IT companies. So that co-managed bit, which I know a lot of MSPs are doing now, which is nice work, but you do have to realize that you are co-managing. You have to work with them, and sometimes that means going out and getting certain certifications or practices or methodologies you've got to use in order to complement them. So learned a load of new things there whilst doing that. So that was halfway there, and then of course moving to Pax8 was quite a change, obviously, from running your own business to joining a large successful business. But not as difficult as it would seem, because a lot of the people in the team work as if they're in a small business. They're all really motivated, smart people, understand the customers, understand the partners, so they try to mirror that. So actually, although it is a large company, it has that small business feel of caring for the client, looking after it, going that extra mile. I see that every day in Pax8. So not as difficult as it would seem. Obviously, things are different. Things at the scale of things are different, and how we deal with stuff is completely different. But not as different as a lot of people would think. But enjoying it.
That's interesting. I'm so glad you're enjoying it, and you deserve it as well, as I said. But if I get your role correct, you're the Senior Director of Security at Pax8, correct?
That's correct.
So tell me, what does a typical day look like at Pax8 for you now?
Well, funny enough, you gave me a few advanced sight of the question. So I thought I'll write some notes down on what a typical day was, and I was like, well, where do I stop? So a typical day for me is there is no typical day. That's why it feels very much like a small business, I guess. And MSPs listening, a typical day for them is go to work, and then everything's different after that.
Yes.
So that is different, and here we are in London. I was earlier in the week in the Netherlands with with Mission Briefing, so presenting, talking to MSPs, and listening, and trying to steer them in the way of good cybersecurity practice, and then over here to London to another security conference, and then we've got Channel Sec here later in the week. So doing that, traveling around and doing that is one thing. But next week's going to be back in the office, following up on a lot of the things, but doing some research, talking with MSPs and my colleagues around new vendors, new approaches. How can we look at different ways and other courses and training that we might be able to put on? So looking on a strategic level, it's very wide ranging, and a challenge. But a really nice one, and probably I've missed so many out of my typical day there. But I've got across hopefully that no 2 days are the same.
Well, I was really intrigued. There's a danger. I found this as a speaker, air quotes, expert, traveling around doing events and things. Balancing the presenting and demonstrating and putting across information to people at events and things, meeting people at events, but then actually being at the grassroots and still talking to MSPs on the day-to-day, helping individuals, helping businesses with things. So do you still manage to, got that balance in place, would you say, the way you're speaking to Pax8 partners and helping them with specific problems?
I think you're absolutely right there, Richard. I think that is the issue. That is the challenge, and I'm getting there. I think it's week by week thinking, have I got that balance right? Am I doing enough in this area or that area? And that's what about being someone who's looking at direction has to get right. And you don't always get it perfect, but that's very insightful. Yeah, it's always, have I spent enough time back at the coalface, as it were, listening to them, and have I spent enough time being strategic and driving this forward? So I don't know whether I've got it right. I think I'm going okay so far, but yeah, that is a balancing act that I'm trying to pull off now, and you're doing it well, and I'm sure I'm following you.
Oh well, thank you, mate. I was reflecting. I was on the train on the way down here from Newcastle to London, and I was jumping into my email. People assume they can't email me anymore. Of course you can. I'm telling everybody listening, you can email me, and people get surprised when I reply to the emails and say, "Oh, it's so good to hear from you." But it is because, I really appreciate people reaching out and having one-on-one conversations with me, when a lot of my time is spent going around to events. So I'm sure you're exactly the same. So,
yes.
Did we just give permission to people to just email us as much as we want? We'll probably.
I think we might have, yeah.
Well, you mentioned it already, but we're here in London for a couple of events. One of them, ChannelSec, a big cybersecurity conference for managed service providers. Tell us a bit more why Pax8 are part of this event.
I think there's lots of reasons, but MSPs are placing much more importance on cybersecurity, and this event is centered around cybersecurity. So it's natural that Pax8 are going to be there because we obviously support our vendors and need to showcase that, but also, as we said previously, we really want to understand MSPs, what their problems are, listen to some of the great speakers and things that are going on there, because that's what's really happening out there in the cyber world. So of course we want to be front and center with that, and support ChannelSec in what they're doing as well, spreading good word amongst MSPs. I've got some really world-class speakers on there tomorrow. So yeah, it would be natural for Pax8 to be there. It's just taken as read, I guess. That's what we do.
I sent an email out to our community earlier this week saying we're going to be in London. You're going to be there. If you've got any questions for Mostyn, and I got a load of emails back from people saying, I wish I'd have known about the event. And I've got, well, the first thing is we've got an events list. We promote all these events, so pay attention, people. But the second one is the fact, and this is some great feedback I've heard about Pax8, that other vendors, I hope listening to this, might pay attention to, and that's how accessible that you are as individuals, as people, as well. So, I mean, you'll be at the event tomorrow. ChannelSec happens every year. You're very approachable. People can come up, ask you questions and things like that. It's just a wonderful opportunity for MSPs to, pick the brains of these world-class experts that are around. So I can't speak highly enough about these type of events and the fact that you're out there meeting and greeting people as well.
Well, yeah, thank you, and yeah, it's great. It's great, and it's don't get me wrong, I'm learning every day. So I go and ask some of the other great speakers there too, and we're fortunate to be in such an amazing industry. I think we said it before that people freely give information about anything they do, really. I'm constantly, everyone sort of takes it for granted, but I'm constantly surprised about that. So that is absolutely central to what Pax8 do, and of course we would be at ChannelSec doing that. And yeah, I'm certainly accessible, and like you say, I know all the staff, really request that people contact them directly.
Yeah, let's jump in with maybe a different tact here. You and I, we've talked about how we come from perhaps a small business background initially. Many of the listeners who to this show run managed service providers that serve small businesses. As a result, those small business clients, they may not have the cybersecurity budgets of the bigger business, of the enterprises that perhaps we've mentioned. What advice, or how can MSPs help their clients to make the most of perhaps what might be a limited cybersecurity budget?
This is a an age-old problem, I think, pretty much with anything in IT, but certainly with cyber now. I mean, my take on this at Pax8 and before really is I think we need to be very mindful of what it is we're trying to protect. So it comes back to basics really of follow that data. We're trying to protect that data. That's their lifeblood and their reputation. So if they've only got a limited budget, let's prioritize what's really important here. What we're really trying to look after. It's very easy to say, yes, we want 5, 6, 7, 8 vendors doing all these different things, and that's great, and they've all got merit. But when you can only afford 2, you need to target them. So I'm really encouraging MSPs to not just follow the tech, follow the data, and that means following the risk. So go through that conversation with your clients and say, okay, what's at risk here, and how can we stop that? Let's go back to basics. Let's have a look at it from a strategic point of view, and then we'll come out of that knowing what we need to protect. And hopefully a cost-effective way of doing it, because we'll concentrate on that to start with, and we'll build from there. And I think that's what we have to do. It's difficult for MSPs sometimes because they've already gone and built a load of things for efficiency and database and design and all kinds of things. But we really do have to start again with cybersecurity and look at it from a different angle.
Yeah. If I were to put you on the spot here, Mostyn, and say, if you were to give advice to, let's say, I'm going to pluck it out of the air, a hypothetical situation, a local charity, minimal budget. And of course, lots of MSPs listening to this deal with charities, schools, other things of that nature. Mm-hmm. What would you say is the one cybersecurity tool or solution that really you say, look, you've got to have that in place, budget or no budget, we've got to have that, the foundation, the building block. Does that make sense?
I think so. Obviously, everyone's different, but let's be generalistic about this, really. I mean, I guess there's probably hardly a business or a charity in the land that hasn't got some form of email or online resource, and we all know the ones that we use there. So that's got to be something you protect, and it actually happens also to be the number one attack vector for criminals to attack you. So it would make sense to protect that. So something like making sure they've got a really good password policy in place, and then 2-factor authentication on top of that, both of which are free of charge.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the point is you can really ramp up your security in a free of charge way. Make your password policy consistent, put 2-factor authentication in place, and away to go. From other things as well, you're recording here on a laptop, and many charities might have that because it's a simple way to work and to carry things around. Encryption, if that was to get lost, again, mainly free of charge, or almost exclusively free of charge, particularly with the modern operating systems. So just taking the time to configure these things correctly, we've incurred no cost. We've done 3 things here already and incurred no cost whatsoever, just taking the time to do that. And then there's some relatively low cost, a good anti-malware product, MDR, something like that, probably in the below £5 per user per month category, will really, really defend well. Or some kind of email security product, again, much less than that. So we're in that really small amount of cost, but the payoff is huge. Yeah. And of course, there are many, many other products you can look at, but those ones don't cost anything. One final one that springs to mind would be the on-device firewall. Configure that correctly. Again, free of charge. Just make sure it's done correctly, and so that people can do their work, but they're protected as well. Just simple things, I guess. But particularly in the charitable sector, times are tight, and they can get some free or low cost software, but these things are ostensibly free.
And I mentioned charity, of course. What I was getting at is there's a lot of MSPs who will deal with clients, small business clients who've got little or no budget for this. They perhaps see IT as a necessary evil, not as a value add. We know, they'll come around eventually when they get there. But for now, so the stuff that you've mentioned there can probably get them to sort of 80% of the way there. Of course, no business is ever 100% safe, but it can probably get them a long way there to staying safe, mitigating risk, but without huge amounts of cost, can't it? So.
Yeah, yes, and to go back to a previous question there, really, that's about consistency as well. In some ways you were talking about small business there, and they have got limited budget, but even some of the large businesses find themselves compromised because they weren't consistent in their approach. They might have spent a lot of money, but it doesn't necessarily mean that things were implemented correctly across the board. So if you can be consistent as well, that really, as you say, can make you in the high 80% of protection, really, and then we can think about the remaining amount.
Yeah, and we'll delve into some of the more advanced topics shortly, but I want to stick with this sort of, not really grassroots, but the 101 stuff here, because many MSPs I speak to can struggle to find the right information or training to help them stay skilled to combat, this really fast move in cybersecurity threat landscape. You've already touched upon it earlier. Perhaps elaborate a bit more on resources that you would recommend to listeners to help them upskill, to help them stay ahead of the threat landscape curve.
I guess at this point, I've definitely got to mention Pax8. We do an awful lot as a distributor. We put an awful lot of resource and time and effort into doing that. So, there's a wonderful Microsoft team at Pax8 that can help educate and advise on best practice, how to harden Office 365, all kinds of practices there, which would make, as we've just said, a huge difference to all kinds of customers. So there's a huge resource there straight off. I help deliver our cybersecurity masterclass, which is a whole day free of charge to partners to look at your cybersecurity and give you ideas and share ideas on all kinds of other resources there. So that is a start off. After that, we've got lots and lots of resources out there online, which are really, really good. There are many websites, which I'm sure we can probably tag in the...
we'll put in the show notes. Links
yeah.
To... I was going to... forgive me for interrupting. I was going to say about those masterclasses that you run. You've got rave reviews. So I know the team at Pax8 often would share it with us and say, hey, we've got an event going on here. By the time we got to tell the community, hey, there's an event going on, it had sold out. People got in touch with us and said, well, I can't help it. They sell out quickly. But thank you for running those. And that was before you joined Pax8 as well, that you ran a lot of those events and you just sort of gave your time as a cybersecurity expert. So they got fantastic reviews. So totally free of charge as well to people.
Great. Yeah. Yes. It's not just me, but we have a great team that deliver all that. And indeed, the next two are sold out, which is beyond what we thought. It's brilliant. So people have been very kind with their comments, but hopefully we're getting through, and that's the main thing. It's not a selling exercise; it's an exercise in trying to help MSPs think differently and be cost effective and effective in their cybersecurity journey. Really, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
But there is lots out there as well. There are lots of really great podcasts. There are lots of great resources out there. Threat intelligence is not something that you have to pay, £20,000-30,000 a year for anymore. You can get some really good, cost-effective threat intelligence. And threat intelligence is something that's really valuable to MSPs, but they quite often don't realize this. So finding that threat intelligence and keeping yourself up to date with what's bad out there and what will combat it, in my view, is really important. Added to that as well, a lot of the good vendors give lots of resources and training as part of what they've got, be it hardware, firewalls, software applications, and what have you. They will normally have if they're a good vendor, they will have a really good program of training, because they want you to be effective as well. So there are lots, again, of free of charge resources really out there to do it, alongside the traditional training and many other things. But that costs time and money. I think consume all the free stuff and all the stuff that's really targeted to start with, and then go from there. And not to mention peer groups. There's just so much of this stuff at peer groups. I help out at certain peer groups as well to get out there. But our industry's brilliant. There are loads of people who will share their time.
So much great stuff, isn't there?
Yeah. So many times it's finding the time to fit it all in.
Yeah, it's not just as information.
Not just as a presenter, as an MSP, it must be difficult to find the time. But as ever been the case in technology, you have to learn.
Yeah. Where does Mostyn Thomas, renowned expert in the industry, making you blush here, but where does Mostyn Thomas turn for advice to keep up to date? What are the podcasts that you listen to? What are the websites that you go to, for instance?
Again, we'll probably put them in the notes. But I tend to be, obviously it would be obvious for me to say around the vendors that we use, but that would be obvious. But outside there, I tend to lean into a number of people like Graham Cluley, Ian Thornton-Trump, Wes Spencer in the US. There's loads I can't remember off the top of my head, but a number of those guys who have been there and done it, and even people like Jennifer Bleem, who's doing sales in cybersecurity and what have you, and she's got some really cool stuff and some really interesting articles and thought-provoking stuff. So I tend to go across those and try and spark some ideas and copy, which you've got to do what you got to do. But again, for me, there are loads of these people out there who are willing to share for free all this stuff. So do my own research. But I've got a number of people I go to. So maybe I'll include them as well.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. When we've had Jennifer Bleem on the podcast before, we've had Ian Thornton-Trump on. Funny enough, I texted Jennifer, and I texted back and forth. She's running an event soon, but again, as you say, this is such a wonderful industry full of experts like yourself and others who give freely of their time and experience. So for the benefit of listeners, we'll include all of those podcasts, everything else in the show notes here. So don't worry about having to scribble things down as you're out for a walk or a drive, perhaps. We're based in the UK, of course. You and I doing the interview here today in London, the capital. Pax8, however, is a global organisation, but you've already alluded to the fact they're growing super fast in Europe. For our listeners in Europe, perhaps, can you speak to some of the initiatives that are going on? And you mentioned you've just flown in today from Europe for an event that you were putting on there.
Yeah, and I mean, that was in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands are pretty advanced in cybersecurity in the MSP industry there. So obviously a lot of synergy with us in the UK. So they probably haven't got a lot of differences, but are really embracing Pax8 and really pushing ahead with a lot of great practice over there. But obviously, like you say, we're moving into lots of different countries in Europe, and they've got different types of businesses and different vendors that they've historically been using. So things are different in different countries. But what we're always trying to say is that the fundamentals of cybersecurity are the same pretty much wherever you go. So that's what we're trying to get across to them. So we would say we're going to bring some great vendors and what have you, and that's good. But we're also going to bring all this knowledge, as we previously said, a great team. And I'm really pleased that in Pax8 they are very, very heavily focused on having native speaking people in those countries. So we search. I know that the HR people operations department of Pax8 work extraordinarily hard to find those skilled people with the right attitude, but also native to those countries.
Right.
So, which I think is extremely important. If it's the right thing to do. Occasionally, I have to go over there and I have to endure my English/Welsh accent, but in general, it's done in their native language, which obviously taking the time and the trouble and the effort to get the right people in the right language is the right thing to do. But seems to be winning friends and partners over there.
Yeah, and perhaps we'll include links to European events that Pax8 have coming up. You've mentioned you've got initiatives in Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Germany, the Netherlands. So when we say Europe, there is an awful lot of Europe and the Nordics and everything covered there. So
yeah, we will do.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into the weeds a bit now then. Let's go a bit deeper. So in Europe, you've already touched upon some of the vectors for MSPs to them and their clients to get attacked. In your experience with working with MSPs though, what are the most common threats that our listeners should be aware of? What are the sort of things that, you hear about MSPs getting caught out with, and you're like, oh God, don't they know yet? So what are the common stuff that MSPs can protect themselves and their clients against?
Cool. So let's take clients to start with.
Yes.
Because I think that's probably easier.
That's a good call, because MSPs, we are the key holders to the kingdom, and there's a different set of threats, isn't there?
So if you take clients to start with, obviously that's fairly universal, and there's sort of three that spring to mind straight away, and then you've got to use various techniques to stop that happening. But the three would be phishing emails. That's by far the number one. It's out there for all different types of reasons, but phishing emails are still out there. They're sent in vast quantities, and obviously the majority get caught, but they only need one to get through, the threat actors. So phishing emails would be the first thing where we find that. And added to that, then in its own category, I would say, is sort of business email compromise. Seen a lot of that recently, where people have actually lost 60, 80, £100,000. And it's not just theoretical. That money's actually gone. So that's just for as you probably know. But business email compromise probably starts with a phishing email, but it's highly targeted. It's been highly researched first. They know their target. They're really gonna pursue you with maybe thousands and thousands of phishing emails before one gets through, or a member of your staff, probably not yourselves. And then the third one would be ransomware. Again, mainly delivered via phishing mail, but not exclusively. Sometimes not. But obviously, it's a money-making exercise. It's an extortion exercise. It's thoroughly disagreeable in every way, really. But still out there. A lot of people think it's gone. Still a lot out there. And there has been some defences and some disaster recovery vendors have caught up to a certain extent with some things, but some of the ransomware gangs now are not bothered about that. They will just copy your mail and publish it on the internet. So copy your data, should I say, and publish it on the internet. Which of course has got the whole reputational and the PII risk and all that things as well. So make no mistake, they're criminals. They do what they do. So they would be the top three. They're sort of related in some ways, but not always. And they need attention. And obviously the way to do that is through some technical means. You can put email filtering in place, which helps a lot. Some of the best will get those phishing mails down to the tens or below. Maybe that per month. Business email compromise and that type of problem really is a training issue. So we're talking about security awareness training now, and I think some people deliver that, but not enough people are still not delivering this in a really effective way as well. You can't just send an automated thing out and expect people not to just realise it's a training exercise. I think you need to compromise it with face-to-face and complement it then with maybe automated stuff to see the effectiveness, but tailoring it to that company and what have you is really important, so that they don't just recognize it as a phishing email, so that it's really pertinent to them, and they can learn the lessons of that, because it may come along in the near future. Ransomware, of course, you can get some really sophisticated MDR products now, and that will guard against a lot of ransomware or roll back and what have you. So obviously MSPs can fill that gap by explaining these products to clients, and if we can get them installed first, they've got an antidote, as it were.
Yeah. I'm intrigued. You mentioned about business email compromise. Would that be the same as spear phishing, I've heard it called, or similar?
Well, I guess yes, spear phishing. I think the difference between spear phishing tends to be the mode that they gain access.
Right.
What they do after then is they basically do nothing. So they sit and watch the network, or maybe gain another way. I have a recent example of someone spear phishing doing that, and they didn't really know they'd been compromised, and then they were using two-factor authentication. But because they'd done that, and they'd used the technique where they could add a second factor themselves, so they had their own two-factor authentication. So you think you're operating nice and securely, which in normal times you were. This way they had their own two-factor. And afterwards, it was obvious to see there was a second two-factor device on the tenant. But at the time, it wasn't. And that particular company lost in excess of £100,000.
Oh, my goodness. Terrifying.
So, yeah, absolutely. And of course, not to mention the, IT costs and all kinds of other costs. It doesn't come on its own, does it? It's all those things, those sleepless nights and what have you, which you can't really quantify. So yeah, business email compromise is a particularly horrible attack, and they normally smallish businesses, of which the £100,000 is not a joke.
No, devastating. Yeah. So clearly, based on what you said there, email is still the main vector of attack. That would be the main area that MSPs should be looking to protect their clients in. Of course, not exclusively, but that tends to be the main area of vector of attack.
Absolutely.
If you were to speak directly now to the managed service community, to the MSPs listening to this, based on your experience, what's the number one mistake that you see MSPs making, which you just wish you could say, stop, come on?
Obviously, MSPs are small businesses as well. So all those things we talked about email, they're all relevant as well. Clearly, you need two-factor authentication. You need all those things, of course. But I think the number one thing I would say about MSPs is to say what you don't do to your clients, because so many have said, "Oh yeah, I'm talking to them and they're going, yeah," and I'm saying, "Oh, do they think you do this already? Do you offer this service separately?" And they're like, "No." So I said, "Well, if you don't offer that service separately, there's two possibilities. They either think you do it automatically or they don't." And I said, my guess is that they probably think you do this already. So, sort of the status quo is you've signed up for this already. You're going to recover them from ransomware. You're going to clear up their network. You're going to do all this stuff if they happen to click on that, that spear phishing email. So that would be my number one thing is just go, again, doesn't cost anything. Go to your clients and say, this is what we do cover. More importantly, this is what we don't.
Yes.
Obviously, being a sales, if you're an MSP, you've got to be a salesperson as well. You've got to say, but I can do this for you, and either do it internally or get someone else to do it or whatever. But I think that would be, if we're going to go for one thing,
yes,
that would be the one thing. Really define what it is you've got, rather than just an SLA that says we do everything in this time, or we guarantee to fix this and we do that, but define the this.
Oh my good Mostyn, that is absolute gold right there. I genuinely haven't heard anybody put it that way before now. And one of course, MSPs listening to this will know the horror or the frustration that you experience if, or I should say, when something goes wrong and the client says, we assumed you were looking after that for us.
Yeah.
And that situation where it's like, no, we told, or we didn't tell you, and, awful situation. So really good advice there. So yes, make sure to tell people what you're doing and not doing for them. Make sure to put the lines of responsibility clearly out there. And of course, as you've said, a great upserving opportunity there as well.
Of course, you never know.
Yeah. Can we talk mindset for a minute? I know it might sound an odd topic for a highly technical subject, but what type of thought process or mindset do you think MSPs should perhaps be cultivating internally? When they're faced with these growing cybersecurity challenges, things are changing so quickly. How can they cultivate a mindset internally that thinks security first?
Yeah, you just said it seems really strange, but for me, it's second nature. That's what I'm always focused on, particularly here at Pax8, but was at Astrix. That mindset piece is really, really important for MSPs, because you have to deal with such a diverse amount of clients and their software and their providers. You can't always dictate what's going on. You have to have that flexibility as an MSP anyway. So if you're going to have any constants, they've got to be about mindset. They've got to be about, this is how we do things here. And I would say that the constants, those mindset things, is you need to, again, like I said earlier, follow that data. You need to be a risk mindset. So that's not always saying no. That's not always saying, no, we can't do this. No way, it's insecure or whatever. Because in its way, it's insecure because people will ignore it or just won't deal with it. But we have to go with that whole risk-based approach. Governance, risk, and compliance is the buzz phrase, as it were, but it actually does mean what it says. You know, we basically need to assess what risk is, and then put things in place to do it. And I guess in MSP language, it would be think like a hacker. If you had to break into your own system, how would you go about it? I guess police and people say this about your own house, don't they? I think, if you're going to secure your house, look at it from the outside and see what, how would you break in? How would you get over that fence or whatever? And you have to do it. And it sounds really simple, but a lot of people then sit back in their chair at this point and go, that's a really good question. And then they start thinking about how they break in or whatever. And I say, no, you need to be really serious now. Imagine that, the business depended on you breaking in. It's that important to you, because your attacker will think in exactly the same way. So thinking about it that way, you'll come up with all kinds of ideas. You're an MSP, you're smart, you're used to solving problems. You will get in. And guess what? Someone else would as well. And then if you translate that to your clients and go, if I was going to try and break into you, this is what I would do. Then you've got something really good to tell. You've got a compelling argument at that point. We're not even talking about technology at that point, maybe. Maybe we're talking about a physical access. Maybe we're talking about trying to get some information off someone by social engineering them. So lots of different ways. I guess to have one nugget again would be think like a hacker, or think like someone who's trying to break in, because ultimately that's what people are trying to do. They're trying to disrupt you or break in or steal things from you. And I think that would be my number one thing.
Great advice. You've got my heart beating a little bit faster here. I've got to share it with you. I'm sweating a little bit because my mind wandered then to my business and looking from the outside of the house in. Never heard that analogy before, but really well put. And I was suddenly like, what about that? What about that? I think we're covered. But again, for MSPs, got to go back and look at those things. I love that. Absolutely valuable. We've talked about mindset for MSPs, and I love what you've said there. Lots of people might be listening to this, though, and they have a hard job, I don't want to say persuading, but impressing upon clients the importance of cybersecurity. And I speak to MSPs day in, day out, at conferences. I get emails from people who are having sleepless nights because their clients are not taking cybersecurity as seriously as they are as the MSP. And I always say, my great friend and mentor Carl Palachuk says, you can't take your client's network more seriously than they do. You can't look after it perhaps or think about the risks more than they do. What advice would you give to MSPs to help impress upon their clients the seriousness of cybersecurity?
I totally agree with Carl. Absolutely, they've got to take responsibility. It is their network. At the end of the day, you try your best, but ultimately it's theirs. If they're going to absolve themselves, you've really got little chance. I think that you can't have a rigid approach here, because in the same way that you can't have a rigid approach as an MSP, all your clients are different. You can have a general approach, but I think you've got to take each one as they are. I found that describing or getting stories together that would resonate with decision makers, and I'm always trying to impress on MSPs. You need to get in that board table, and influence those decision makers. And in a small business, the board table might be just the MD's desk or whatever, but more often than not, there's a senior team of 2 or 3 people who make decisions, financial and strategic. I think you need to get in front of them and give them an idea of what potentially could go wrong, and how you can help. And that I think is making it real. Don't go to them with stories around big name hacks and things like that, because everyone has seen it, but everyone sort of dismisses it. So what you need to do really is make that real for them. So if they're a legal firm, for instance, go and find, again, we were talking about those online resources. Yeah. There's lots of really trusted online resources. The Information Commissioner's Office for one. You can find all kinds of really good case studies. And say, look, this is what happened to this particular company. They're just like you. And I don't want, you're one of my customers. I don't want that to happen to you. So this is what I suggest. Can we talk about this? So try and make it relating to them. And I know a lot of MSPs do that already about, databases and cloud services and what have you already. Just continue on that. But you need to think like a hacker, and then present maybe the bad news, but the good news as well, or how we can maybe use this to improve productivity by doing something differently. So always try and sell the up bits, the upside of these things as well. But I think that's really important to get them to identify. There are lots of other resources which I've seen some MSPs using as well. There's a network of cyber resilience centres around the country, which are run by the police, so a trusted resource, and they will help you either presenting to companies or giving you case studies. Obviously, they change the names, as it were, but they will give you lots and lots of really good information, again, free of charge, or they just, what they really want is MSPs to engage with them. And just try and present to it. Maybe lunch and learns, get a load of them together, beer and pizza, whatever that might be, and just give them some really good advice. Again, MSPs are great at sharing advice with the peers. Do the same with the customers. Don't expect to sell anything, just share advice, maybe how to keep secure at home, encrypt your devices or something like that. Just anything that you can do in that way to get that point. I guess what we're saying here is you're a trusted partner as an MSP. You've got to be now a trusted security partner.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Remind me of the local resource centres that you mentioned again, run by the police.
Oh yeah, the cyber resilience centres.
Cyber resilience centres. Yes. So we'll include that in the show notes as well. That's a new one to me, but that absolutely makes sense for people to engage. I've said before about MSPs engaging with local colleges to find good quality people, but engage with the local police force. I did it. One of the first things that we did as an MSP in Birmingham, engage with West Midlands Police. So we, it's a reciprocal arrangement. And then the police want to reduce the amount of cybercrime out there, but they can't do it alone. So
absolutely
great opportunity there. Yeah. I mentioned in your intro here that you're a qualified cyber essentials assessor. So for the benefit of listeners, what's cyber essentials and why should MSPs be looking into it? And I should preface that by saying, or qualify that by saying, we've got a global audience for the podcast here. Okay. Is cyber essentials a UK only thing, or?
Right, yes. Cyber essentials is predominantly UK, but if any other company from Europe or global wants to deal with, say, UK government or a company who's supplying UK government, they probably will have to abide by Cyber Essentials as well. And they may want to become Cyber Essentials certified because they want to get into the UK market. So it's not a bad thing, and it's not exclusive, absolutely. And as Astrix, we've supplied certificates to companies all over Europe. Right. So they tend to be ones who've maybe got a dual presence, maybe a presence in the UK and in, I don't know, Greece or something, wherever that might be. Yeah. So to go back to your original question. It's a framework and a certification scheme. So that is basically a set of questions around cybersecurity that companies answer those questions, and based on the answers, an assessor will mark them, and they will either pass or fail. There's two levels to Cyber Essentials. That's the question and answering part, which I've obviously oversimplified there. You have to attest to it to say you've be a senior member of the company and that you're telling the truth. So that's the basic level, and after you've passed the basic level, you can then go on to the plus, which a lot of people insist on because it is an audited version of this. So an assessor like myself or one of the team in Astrix or many of the other certification bodies around the UK will run a technical test based on the equipment and the answers that you gave in the self-assessment. So marking your homework, as it were. But it is not a pen test as such, but it's much much more wide ranging than a pen test. Not as in depth, but more wide ranging around a wide area of cybersecurity. So everything that's internet based, from do you have two-factor authentication on your cloud applications, to have you got a password policy, to will your device fend off basic malware attacks? The engineers run pretend malware and see whether it will get through your defenses. All the way through to policy and procedure. What have you got in place? So it's a, as the clue in the name would say, essentials. It is a basic level cybersecurity certification, but a wide-ranging and quite effective one. And a lot of studies and data has indicated that it's very effective. I think 70 or 80% effective against basic commodity internet attacks. So why wouldn't you do that? And there's two other benefits. That one is it's not particularly expensive. The basic one is between £300 and £500, which is, let's be honest, not very expensive. And the audited one, probably ranges between £1,200, and it depends on the size of your company, maybe £3,000 or £4,000 if you're a big company. But still, for a cybersecurity standard that's been audited, pretty good. So you've got some peace of mind, and you've got some probably really useful data from that audit. But another plus of that would be, of course, you get a government-backed badge to display on your signature, website, whatever, to show other companies or clients or vendors or whatever that you take cybersecurity seriously.
Right, of course.
And also you can search on the government website to see whether you're actually telling the truth. So I can look up a company who's got the badge and see whether, and anyone can to see whether they are actually certified or not. So it's a really good way to demonstrate your mindset that we were talking about earlier. Really, as a company, if you've got the right mindset, you'll probably go and do this. And it may be easy to pass if you've got brand new equipment and you've got good practices. It may be more of a challenge if you haven't. But the whole point is that you want to be secure. So a really good scheme. It's been going about 9 years now, and actually is quite well respected now around the world. A lot of other countries and places are looking and thinking, yeah, we've got something, but something that doesn't demonstrate a certificate quite as well. So a really, really good scheme.
Excellent. And again, we'll include in the show notes links, to Cyber Essentials and everything that goes along with it there, because I highly recommend it for MSPs to look into. Absolutely. And I would go as far as to say the vast majority of the most progressive MSPs are already entering or have done that area. So, let's get nerdy for a minute. Let's get a little bit geeky. We've both been itching to do this, but joking aside, Pax8 has got quite the marketplace now of cybersecurity tools, platforms for MSPs. There's, lots out there. Are there any tools or platforms in the Pax8 marketplace that have particularly caught your attention that you'd like to draw, from you look at it and go, oh my goodness, that is good. I've got to tell people about that.
Yes. Well, funny enough, you were mentioning Acronis, and Acronis have
we were talking earlier. I'm blown away with some of the stuff Acronis are doing at the moment.
Yes. As a total package, as it were, so a whole system. They're way more than most people think they are. Even MSPs, know them for some of the things they've done previously, but they're really pushing ahead with some really cutting edge tech, and in true Pax8 fashion, easy to manage. So that would be one that would be well worth a look at. I think. Going on my theme of security, obviously, in my area, I would say probably SentinelOne. A lot of people know that. I'm not telling anyone new there, but it is a really, really good product. And I see there's a lot of specialists inside Pax8 who know it inside out, and I can see when it's configured well, it is very impressive indeed. And all our equipment has got that on, so that's a good one. But one that's certainly on the up as well, which sort of fits perfectly into what I'm bringing to Pax8, to the partners, to showing them what showing how to sell to clients and how to deal with cybersecurity would be a service called Connect Secure, which is covering a number of angles actually around the vulnerability management, around asset discovery, and then remediation lists, and some other bits which are in beta coming out as well around the sort of GDPR element as well. It is a really, really good product. And is growing very, very quickly. So that's a really I wish I was using it when I was an MSP. If I was an MSP, I definitely would be using it now.
That's the proof of the pudding, isn't it? I think long-time listeners to this show will hear me say, I wish that was around when I was running an MSP, and not trying to be the old men of the industry, but that's the proof of the pudding. I think when you look at a tool and go, oh, that would have made life so much easier or so much better for us back then. So you mentioned Sentinel-1 and Connect Secure and Acronis as well there. So on the subject of Acronis, I was part of the big Acronis Cyber Summit, or Cybersecurity Summit in Miami, Florida last year. I was blown away by the innovation that Acronis are showing with some of their products. What's Pax8's relationship with the likes of Acronis? What does that look like in reality?
It's they're a vendor, and we've got lots of vendors, but I think some vendors have a really close relationship, and a close partnership. So my experience with Acronis is that they give a lot of collaboration with their software, but they also give a lot of collaboration with their marketing and with their hospitality and how we help partners go to market and sometimes take them away with some nice places as well. Obviously, they've got sponsorship deals with lots of high-end sporting and other activities. So I think that whole marketing go-to-market piece and, the intelligence and training that they bring as well makes a big difference, because obviously when you're dealing with an advanced product, you need training. So that would be key to that, really, is that they bring all that to the party.
Yeah, great company, and I think they're one of the best kept secrets in managed services, which is bizarre considering the size of the company.
Absolutely,
they are. But I was saying to you earlier, I was super impressed. They've got a huge presence with MSPs, IT support providers in Europe, in Latin America, but somehow in the UK, perhaps, and to a lesser degree, the United States or North America. People have got preconceptions about who they are, and we want to shatter those preconceptions because they really are doing, wonderfully innovative work. So check out Acronis. But thank you for mentioning all three of those. We can go and have a look at them. I want to change tact as we come towards the end of our time here. I'm very respectful of your time, and I know there's lots of people who want to speak to you, but who do you consider an influence on your career? You've been an MSP, you've been a cybersecurity expert, you are now working as a vendor as one of the world's top cybersecurity experts as well. Are there any authors, mentors, coaches that you'd encourage our listeners to go and check out who have been an influence on you?
You mentioned that you might ask me this. And I spent 5 minutes sort of thinking about it, and I wrote a couple of names down. And I wrote some names down and thought, oh my gosh, people are just going to go, what is he talking about here? Because I guess my mindset, I tend to go off in different directions and pull from different things. So you might think that, I'd written a couple of names down here like Simon Sinek, which would be fairly obvious, but I do like that, looking for your why and what have you. Do like that way of things. But I've got a couple written down here and sort of from a motivational point of view, from a personal motivational point of view as well. Jim Collins, Built to Last, Good to Great, fantastic things. I've become a bit of a Malcolm Gladwell fan as well. So I think I've read just about everything from him. I'd also written down Chip and Dan Heath. So
yes,
love that. That's great. So I as you can see, I'm quite eclectic in this. And one of my other ones, which I had to mention, would be Matthew Syed, Black Box Thinking, and what have you. It's just that's how I work. So not really techie, really.
No, that's interesting. But I would say all of those have been big influences on me. Great authors. For anybody listening to this, if you've not followed their work before, go and check it out. Because I speak to so many, incredibly smart people and successful people like yourself on this podcast. These names keep coming up again and again. Nothing to do with tech, but everything to do with mindset, perhaps. So, yeah.
Yeah. So sorry to be predictable. But.
Not at all, not at all. And, and when I say these names come up again and again, quite often when I ask people that question, they tell me, technology and futurists and things of that nature. Yeah. But actually mindset, as we've already referenced, has got a huge part of what success in this industry actually means. So following these people can really bring incredible benefits. So thank you for sharing them all. And again, for the benefit of listeners, we will include all of those names in show notes there. But hopefully some of them will be familiar to you. And if not, you're going to get a lot of value out of checking them out. I'm also intrigued as a friend, what does Mostyn Thomas do when he's not being this cybersecurity expert? What do you do in your downtime?
You want to hear that I create Python code and do all things like that.
I suspect that's not the case, but tell me.
That is absolutely not the case. Yeah, I do. When I switch off, I do absolutely switch off. So obviously you know anyway, Richard, but I live in sort of rural South Wales. So do a lot of that rural stuff, go walking, but more importantly, mountain biking is my thing. As a group of us will go out, so we just, whenever we get a chance, we're out, and just being out, phones off, just go and do that thing is our thing, really. And that same sort of gang of people normally tend to be the guys who go mountain biking. We're very regular in booking places and going as a huge group with kids now, probably 25, 30 people. In fact, last weekend I've just come back from Devon. So yeah, going and descending on somewhere and hopefully leaving it better than when we came back is something that I definitely do. So that would be me, really. Do all those sort of things. I'm a big fan of sports. I like going watching lots of sports. My son is in America in university playing football, or soccer as I'm now supposed to call it. So huge football fan, but also been a huge motorsport fan. So I go and watch a lot of motorsport.
Well, can I ask you a question about this? I've never spoken to you as a friend, but am I right in saying that you were once a member of the Toyota Europe rally team?
Yes, that is actually true. Yeah.
Wow, tell us more.
It's a while ago in a previous lifetime. But yes, I was a member of the Toyota Team Europe, and I was a member of the service team. So you can imagine I was technical, obviously. Still a geek then, so I was sort of half mechanical and half electrical. So hence probably where the origins of computer systems we were running at the time came from. But that did involve running around the UK and Europe, servicing cars and just being part of the whole petrol head lad culture. Really, it was living the dream, if you know what I mean. But it was a great. I did that for about 3 years, and it was amazing. It was great, but absolutely brilliant times, and learned loads, and met a lot of people that were my heroes really at the time. These drivers, but they were so approachable. And I guess you always try to think whenever you're doing anything, you'd like to be as approachable as they were. They were fantastic, and still see some of them now. If they tend to just be wandering around, and no one really knows who they are now, because we're talking in excess of 20 years ago here. Yeah. But great times. And I am the geek, unfortunately, when people who go to watch motorsport go to the Bend and watch that. I'm in the service part talking to the mechanic. But, there we are. What can you do?
Oh, Mostyn, this has been absolutely fantastic to sit down with you. Thank you for making the time to sit in a hotel room next to a bed and talk cybersecurity. So
I'm never going to forget it, Rick.
Well, I've sat with some of the world's top experts on their beds in hotel rooms, Mike McAllowitz, and I actually lay on a bed and did a podcast interview. So you're in great company there. But perhaps before we go down that road too much, I'll draw a veil over that conversation. But I know you've already been on the podcast before. You made a lot of friends as a result of that, a lot of fans, people listening to you. I know there's going to be a whole new generation of people now who come across your work and absolutely want to reach out to you and continue the conversation. So anybody listening to this, they want to find out more about PAX 8, they want to come and join you at a workshop, or indeed they just want to reach out and have a conversation with you. How can they find you?
But I guess normal ways, Richard, So I'm happy for people to email me at PAX 8, so mthomas@pax8.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I do loads on LinkedIn, so just my name. Obviously, you're going to put it in the show notes anyway. And I don't tend to do many other social media channels because keeping in touch with them all, I just don't. So they're my two really. But if you email me or on LinkedIn, I will definitely get back to you. And as far as PAX 8 goes, there are loads of resources. I think / the European site security. There's loads of links on there to all kinds of resources. They're just great. I mean, they just get better and better every day. And I don't know whether my contact details are on there, but they'll be on your website.
We'll make sure they're in the show notes. And for the benefit of listeners as well, we've put together a website, tublog.co.uk/PAX8, because there is so much good stuff that we'd spend another half an hour giving out URLs on there. But we've got the one site with everything on there and links to everything else. Or you can go to our the blog accompanying this podcast, and we'll include everything in the show notes there as well. But,
sounds great.
Mostyn, this has been a real treat. Thanks for your time, my friend. I appreciate it.
Been great. Thanks, Richard.
Cheers. Hey folks, Richard here. Thanks for listening today. I know you've got a ton of options for who you listen to nowadays, so I really appreciate your support. Do you have any feedback on this episode? Ideas for future guests? Tweet me at Tublog using the hashtag TubTalk. I respond to every tweet and really appreciate your feedback. Hey team, this is Richard again. Just one more thing before you take off, and that is MSP Insights. Now, every Tuesday, I share my thoughts on the business of IT with you, the managed service community. Thousands of managed service providers already subscribe to MSP Insights. It's easy to sign up, easy to cancel. MSP Insights is basically a short email from me every Tuesday without fail with advice on growing your IT business, plus cool resources I've found, discovered, or started exploring that week. It's kind of like my diary of cool things, and often includes articles or books I've read, tools I've discovered, and events I think you'd be interested in, often sent to me by my friends and Tub Talk podcast guests. So, if that sounds fun, a short tiny bite of MSP goodness every Tuesday, and you'd like to try it out, just go to go.tub.co/Tuesday. That's go.tub.co/Tuesday. Drop in your email and you'll get the very next one. Thanks for listening.